Hi guys, this is not strictly a Chem Jungle video, but it's about how to come up with a proposal for your chemistry extended essay and how that differs from a chemistry IA. Okay, so there's some pretty common themes between the IA and the EE. In both of them, you come up with a general topic that you're interested in, you work out your independent variable or what you're going to change, and then you work out your dependent variable or what you're going to measure in that scenario. So for example, for your IA, you might say, I'm really interested in how to work out how effective antacids are. I'm going to change the brands of antacids and I'm going to collect 5 different brands of antacids and compare them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the moles of acid that they neutralize. Now, this would be great as an IA, but as an EE, you need an extra level of complexity because for an extended essay, you need to, in your conclusion, be able to draw some kind of argument. Now, the problem is that if you've got something like this, you'll eventually end up saying, oh, this brand neutralizes more moles than this brand, and you can't really say much more than that. So you need an extra level. So what you might do is you might choose to add an extra layer of complexity by measuring some more different things. So I could also measure the volume of gas that's released from my antacid, or I could measure the time that's taken to neutralize the acid. And those 3 pieces of information together would enable me to make a discussion and make an argument about which antacid was actually the most effective. So it's adding an extra layer of complexity somewhere in this model. Let me show you another one. So in this example, I'm super interested in the vitamin C content of orange juice, and I've decided I'm going to change the temperature of the orange juice and measure how much vitamin C there is within the orange juice. So that's all well and good as my IA, but as my EE, I need an extra level of complexity. So instead of adding the complexity and measuring different things, what I'm going to do here is instead change different things about my orange juice to then see how that affects the quantity of vitamin C. So for example, you could change the time that you heated it for, or you could change the amount of pulp that was in it. So you could have like full pulp orange juice and no pulp orange juice and see if that made a difference to the quantity of vitamin C. So by doing this, instead of just saying as temperature increases, vitamin C content increases, you can compare the time of heating as well as the temperature that it's heated at, as well as the type of orange juice to come up with an overall conclusion based on more than one thing. Here's some things to think about if you're trying to increase the complexity levels of your IA idea. So you can think about changing the reagents, so changing one of your 2 or 3 starting materials and seeing how that affects the final outcome. You can also change conditions, so changing temperature, maybe changing pressure, maybe changing surface area, or the time things are heated for. You can definitely change as part of the experiment. You can also, in some cases, change the method. If there's more than one way of making something, then you can compare different methods and find out which one is more successful. What you will measure, you can think about perhaps measuring things like the volume of gas, which is really like the amount of reactants or products. So you can always measure the relative ratios of those. You can also measure things like the time taken for doing anything, or the purity of your product, or the yield of your product, or how stable it is and finding a way to measure that, or just how suitable it is for a certain use. So coming up with at least a couple of ways to increase complexity in your question. Just to summarize, your supervisor cares about how complex your question is. If it's super linear, like an IA, then it will not produce a great quality extended essay because you'll have no argument to make in your conclusion. So come up with something that's a little bit more interesting, that really will generate some conversation and some argument. It may not represent any of these ways that I've drawn it in this video, but if you speak to your teacher, they should be able to talk to you about whether what you're coming up with is okay or not, but maybe it doesn't fit this model exactly, and that's okay.